Hello and welcome once again to episode 134 of Code Completion. We're a group of iOS developers and educators helping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing your code. My name is Dimitri and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
So once more, we have some Swift evolution updates. One is just an update of an updated evolution, namely observability is going through the rounds one more time, and this time to make just some clarifications with regarding the observable macro and a marker protocol that will help kind of make everything seamless. So considering it's getting like lots of feedback and lots of iteration, that probably means that we might be seeing it very, very soon in a few betas to start actually using it. So that is really, really cool. And I hope we do see it soon. Though I don't think it has an implementation attached to it yet. So maybe not. That's the nature of an actual open source project being attached to Apple's release schedule, right? It's maybe it makes it, maybe it doesn't.
Yep, and that's fine. So this second review process goes through June 12th, so a little less than 2 weeks for this second round. It looks like they're kind of just honing in on what they want it to be. They've sort of tabled a couple things to be. It says they'll be. The asynchronous values for and changes for methods have been removed and are now discussed in future directions. So that sounds good. Just kind of probably getting that MVP implementation in and go from there.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that like WWDC has shipped with beta 1 of like one version of a Swift proposal for it to be radically revamped within a few betas or even within a few releases. So it's good to see this process being shepherded through because this one was not really proposed by Apple at all. It's all people outside of Apple that have kind of brought this one forward. And I was just reading another pitch as well of like being able to mark protocols inside of other types, so that way you can have like table view dot protocol, which you can't have right now. You can have a type alias for the dot protocol bar, but you still need to have a table view protocol defined elsewhere, which is really silly. And it's kind of gone through the process n times due to the fact that we have generics and generics make everything complicated. And yes. This one is basically saying like, put the generics aside for the simple case. Let's just get this in, and then we can think about the generics, because it seems like everyone wants this in terms of like in one capacity or another. So I'm glad to see even those kinds of things being considered, especially when people have been asking them for literal years. Though we've been on Swift 5 for literal years, haven't we?
Yeah, it moved fast for a long time, and Swift 5 just kind of slowed everything down, which, I mean,
I guess it's a good thing.
We have a bunch of revisions of Swift. What are we on? 5.8 now? 5.7?
Yeah, we're about to ship 5.9.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, things are moving, but yeah, not quite as fast.
Yeah. And other news of things that are moving, one last evolution update, and I'm not sure if this fits as an evolution update or not. This is kind of like one of the big tentpole features for Swift to eventually get, and that is C++ interoperability. So it seems like using Swift from C++ has been like done already, and is used actively as part of like the Swift compiler and stuff like that, because some part of the Swift compiler is written in Swift, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
But that was half of the story, right? Using Swift from a memory unsafe language. And the other half of the story is using a memory unsafe language, C++, from within Swift. And that's what this document aims to go through. And if you don't know anything about C++, you can safely ignore all of this. It's not really relevant. If you do know about C++, you know about the possible headaches that the language team has been kind of working around. The language group has been working around, and this kind of outlines what their strategy is going to be.
Cool. Yeah, you kind of answered my question. I was going to ask, like, this isn't going to be probably as, I guess it's going to be a much more of a niche thing than like interop between Objective C and Swift, where that's fairly common. This seems like pretty niche use case overall as far as the amount of people that would probably be using this.
Yeah, and it's likely going to be for people who already have a C++ code base but want to
Uh-huh.
start taking advantage of Swift. You can't go like all or nothing, and this gives you the avenue to go little by little. As you've certainly seen that progress from Objective C to Swift, you have to go little by little. If you go
Yeah.
all or nothing, it's like a
Oh,
big
yeah.
endeavor. So basically the strategy here is to identify safe patterns and make those available in Swift. Anything that is not identified as a safe pattern via heuristics can be marked as like, hey, this is available in Swift as this.
Sure.
And you get like complete override if you mark your C++ code appropriately. And if you don't do either of those two things, it's just unavailable. So
Hmm.
I think this is like a good strategy because most C++ developers, they follow the good patterns because it's like basically you walk into a room full of shotguns that are ready to go off. And that's what C++ is. And I hate to use an analogy that is a symbol of childhood death in America, but um, that is
Be,
what memory safety is.
there be
Uh,
dragons.
there be dragons, definitely. So yeah, it's to use a new analogy, because it's everyone always talks about like shooting yourself in the foot. But to use a new analogy of a more uh, imaginary background, you walk into a dragon lair and there's gold everywhere, but you don't see the dragon yet.
There you go.
That's what C++ feels like. It's safe until it's very not
Uh-huh.
safe. Whereas Swift is you're walking into the safe deposit box at your bank. It's like robbers don't exist anymore. You're probably fine there. Um, I don't know how far we're ever going to use that analogy again, but I propose it here.
It has
Made
been
up on the
proposed.
spot. Talking about stuff that's definitely not made up on the spot. It seems like new Macs are going to be announced at WWDC per Mark Grumman. And this time it's going to be Mac 14, 13 and Mac 14, 14.
Oh, gotta love those identifiers.
Yep.
What that really means is probably M2 Max and M2 Ultra computers. So probably a
Max,
Mac
right?
Studio.
Not a
Yes,
Mac S, a Max.
yes, Max with an X. Man, they can't believe they did that. Yes, so most likely going to be a MacBook Pro and probably a Mac Studio as well,
MacBook
right?
Pro? I thought it was going to be a Mac Studio / Mac Pro was like what they're thinking of in
Oh,
terms of those
yes,
two machines.
yes, you're right.
Um, and this is made more complicated. It used to be easy, like, oh, you see these identifiers and you're like, okay, this is
Yeah,
one family line. 14 is one family line. We can kind of identify that. But like every M2 Mac is a Mac 14, which is not helpful to anyone, which is to Apple's benefit because they can kind of be a little more loosey
sneaky.
goosey with their identifiers, and it's to
Yes.
our detriment because we can't guess what they are. So we have no ideas. These could be MacBook Airs for all we know. Um,
That'd be sweet.
though, if there is a MacBook Air to follow the thing, it would be a Mac 15 because that would be the
Uh-huh.
M3 MacBook Air, right?
Yes. Yes. So yeah, I don't know. It'd be cool though. I this article, it's a 9 to 5 Mac article. I thought it was a little bit interesting. If it is a new Mac Studio, which I think this is what they're kind of projecting, um, they're saying once again, Apple will try to sell the Mac Studio as a replacement for the Mac Pro, at least until the company decides on the future of its modular desktop. So probably not looking at that Jade 4C anytime soon, as far as rumors go, which is a little bit of a bummer. But um, I don't have one, but Dimitri can attest that the Ultra is pretty dang good. RAM issues aside,
Yeah, and even the RAM, like it's a good machine.
yeah.
They're good computers. Sponsor. Um, so it's a shame that we're not going to see that extreme chip, as
Yeah,
Spencer so lovingly coined, and definitely no one else
no, definitely
at
not.
all.
No, Nope, it's just
It
me.
was on this podcast first. The MX Extreme. I replace X with whatever number you want. It's
Hmm.
gonna happen one year.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it would be. It's very likely that we are going to see a new Mac. Apple has alluded to the Mac Pro when they kind of finished up their main transition, and they said, "Hey, there's going to be one more. We're not talking about it today. We are not ignoring it either. It's coming."
Yeah.
So now is the time, right? If it doesn't happen now, they might as well just kind of air power their way out of this. And that would be fine, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you this: what is the what can you get 128 gigs of RAM in your Mac Studio?
I think it was 256, or it
Uh,
might have been 128. Yeah,
I think it's 128. What
let's.
they're saying is the M2 Ultra will double the specs of the M2 Max, which would be
So it'll be 192.
192. So is that compelling for you?
Yeah, I mean, I was compelled by the multiple terabytes possible with
Yes,
the
of
previous
course.
Mac Pro, but like at the end of the day, I think I'm good for the time being. Life is changing rapidly for me, so I don't
Sure.
know what I will need and what I won't need. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm always going to welcome more RAM, and it's sad that we can't like upgrade RAM anymore. Like maybe I could have just
Yeah.
added more RAM, but that's not a thing with non Mac Pro computers, and we'll see if when a Mac Pro is announced, if that is still a thing for a Mac Pro computer, right?
Yeah.
It very well might not be.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. You know what's way interesting is,
Oh, oh boy.
uh, yeah, interesting in pretty much a bad way. Um, Christian Selig, the creator of Apollo, which is a Reddit app, which is very, very popular, he put up a Reddit post today, or sorry, yesterday, uh, that he called with Reddit. So the news basically is that uh, Reddit is going to charge $12,000, I think, for 50 million API requests, which is like, okay, that's a lot of API requests. And then he breaks it down to say what it would cost for Apollo, the current user base of Apollo, if they were to continue on that, or if he was to basically actually pay that, it'd be $20 million a year. Apollo made 7 billion requests in a month. So $1.7 million per month for him to keep that up. So they're just basically pulling a Twitter and forcing third-party app developers out. Like it's not a reasonable amount of money. Twitter's was $42,000 for 50 million tweets, but this is, I mean, $12,000 for anyone operating an actual large client of Reddit or Twitter, like Apollo or other, or like Tweetbot, or yeah, Tweetbot or whatever. It's just like an unreasonable amount of money. Like you can't subsidize that with subscriptions or anything. It'd just be like an obscene amount of money.
Hmm.
So it's a huge, huge bummer.
Yeah, and he outlines like how ridiculous this is by comparing it to Imager, which is another
Hmm.
service that has like requests. And for 50 million API calls, that cost him a grand total of $166. So
Wow.
that is the order of magnitude more expensive that Reddit is asking. And to be clear, it's not the cost of maintenance or servers
Yeah.
that is motivating this. It is something completely different. Namely, that they don't, it's a clear message that they don't want third party apps
Yeah.
for their service. And it's a real shame because, as far as I've heard, and I don't use Reddit all that much, the Apollo app was by far a much better way to experience Reddit
Yeah.
than Reddit's own app. And it's a great shame that Reddit feels the need to tell all of the users who care about quality to go somewhere else, because that's essentially what they're doing
Hmm.
with this in no uncertain way, that this is the way it's going to be. People have speculated, and this is all we can do is speculate, that this is because large language models from like OpenAI, they were trained on Reddit data, and therefore that is something that they want to just cash in on, because the large language models, they have some cash to spend, whereas these small app developers, they don't really have any. Like
Oh,
I'd be surprised if Christian makes more than a single salary that you'd work like
hmm.
at a 9 to 5 by making this app. In
Yeah,
fact, it's probably quite a bit less, but because he's like working on his own thing, it's immensely more satisfying. And unfortunately, it comes with the giant risk of at any moment in time, the services you depend on can kind of neuter what you can do. So this is the situation that he is unfortunately in. And it's a great shame that Reddit did not learn from what is happening to Twitter,
yeah,
and is deciding to go down this route rather than carve out exceptions for the uses of their API that are not like trying to profit off of their data. Because
yeah.
in all respects, like the Apollo app is not doing that, and they can make that very clear via legal means, right? There's a
Sure.
legal process to help them with that, and they're choosing to just go, I don't know, a different way, which is a shame.
Yeah, it almost just seems like maybe they wanted to do this for a long time. I don't know, what their uh, reasoning, I suppose, is, but maybe this was just that opportunity with all of the large language models uh, profiting off the data to just be like, okay, sweet, this is the reason we need the cover story, if it, as it were, to just shut everything down. So it's a bummer. I mean, the Reddit app is, I think, better than like the official Reddit app is like better than the Twitter app, if that makes sense, like the official Twitter app. But yeah, Apollo's pretty dang good. And if you just, I mean, it's doing like the same thing as Twitter, right? It's like curating stuff that you're not following, and if you just want to care about what you're actually following, the subreddits you've joined and stuff, and yeah, Apollo's really good. So super bummer that these companies are putting out like these passion projects that people really like all of Tapbot's apps, like
Mm-hmm.
Tweetbot and everything, and now Apollo. So it's a big bummer.
Yeah, I want to read out a post by Craig Hockenberry, who was the principal developer for Twitterific at the Icon Factory. And he says, "So sorry to hear about the API bullshit. I know how hard it is to take care of yourself. One of the things I grappled with was, what now? After so many years of doing the same thing, it's hard to step back and get a clear picture of where to head. For creative folks such as yourself, there's always something somewhere that needs your talents. It's not always easy to find that new path, but you will." And I think that sums this up perfectly, because they very similarly went through that very same thing. And unlike Tapbots, they didn't just rebound on Mastodon, for instance. They
Sure.
are kind of diversifying the kinds of apps that they're working on instead, which is a completely different strategy, right? Whereas Tapbots was able to use much of the same work that they did for Tweetbot.
Yeah.
And they kind of went through this once before. I don't know if you remember app.net, but
Mm-mm.
app.net was an endeavor by like basically people in the Apple platform ecosystem were trying to make a replacement for Twitter that was, instead of being based on ads, it was based on like, hey, you had to pay to be part of it, and payments would go back to developers. It was all
Hmm.
about like building apps on a shared ecosystem. Not too unlike Mastodon, but it was before Mastodon, right? It was an experiment in that. Unfortunately, that failed because there was no free tier, and therefore no way for people to kind of dip their toes into this. It was
Sure.
just, you pay, you're part of it. You don't pay, and you're not part of it. and it failed to kind of grow as a result of that. But Tapbots, they made an app.net client, which was Tweetbot at the time,
Ah,
that was like skinned basically the same, but it was going towards the app.net API instead of the Twitter API. So it's not the first time they did this. They probably knew the writing was on the wall for a very long time, and prepared to have something that can be easily ported. And
mhm.
that's what Ivory is. It's a code base that has
It's
evolved
mhm.
from Twitter to Mastodon and has done it well, right?
Yeah,
And it's still in the process of evolving, getting better. And it's good to see that, if like, I don't know if our listeners knew, but it's available on the Mac now. And if you went for that super duper premium subscription, you get the Mac app as a part of that. So
right.
um, it's good to see them rebounding well. Though I don't know finances, like if it's well, or if they're panicking just as much as most people are when
Yeah.
things don't go well. So we'll see.
Yep. It's I mean, in Christian's case, like I think it's just him working on it, like it's not a
Hmm.
team at all. So
No.
I mean, absolute worst case, if like, he has to shut down Apollo, I'm sure his skill set is amazing and can find a job, but like that's probably not what he wants. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
if he's been indie so long, hopefully he can find another app to work on personally, or I mean, absolute worst case, if he has to get a job somewhere, I'm sure someone would snatch him up, but it's still just a bummer for him and a bummer for everyone that uses it regularly.
Yeah, and a reminder to anyone who is doing indie work: make sure you have a proper business to work behind.
Hmm.
Because what is likely going to happen is he's going to need to do the same thing that the Twitter apps did, and start refunding people for subscriptions.
Yeah,
And if he is working under like his own name, then he is liable for those payments, and he can't just declare bankruptcy under the business
right.
to fail to make that up, because likely he doesn't have like a huge amount sitting in the bank ready for cancellation requests, right?
Yeah.
That was padding for him as the only developer working on this. So um, just a reminder to anyone who is kind of in this process: make sure to get a proper business license, make sure to have a proper business, make sure your business protects you, the person working for that business or that owns the business, from anything that the business is doing, because it is very easy for that to kind of leak into your personal life,
Hmm.
and potentially ruin it. So just putting that out there as a general reminder. If you are doing indie development, it's great that you have an Apple developer account in your name, and you have your name in the thing. Just make sure there's a business backing that name,
Yeah.
even if it's named after you, like your name LLC. That's fine. Just have
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Whether it's an LLC, whether it's a corporation, like, have something that can act as a buffer. And we're not lawyers, so we cannot help you with that. But we can encourage you to kind of look into
Yeah. Not legal advice, but legal encouragement.
it. It's legal advice from people who don't know the law. Let's put it that
There you go.
way. Talking about legal advice from no, I'm just kidding. It seems that Apple has as much trouble deciding which platform to put things on than every other business out there, because they have decided to put Apple Classical. I always almost read that as Apple Classical, but
Yeah,
no,
I know.
Apple Classical. We are
Throwback.
forever burdened by Classical on this podcast
That's right.
since episode 1. But Apple Classical is launching on Android before the Mac and even the iPad, which I find hilarious in a way.
Yeah, it's interesting. So one thing I didn't know is that uh, I guess the Apple Classical app is based on a service that they bought called, or a company they bought called Prime Phonic. So I didn't realize that. So maybe there was already an Android app for that, and they're just reskinning it.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, not sure.
I imagine they're using their Apple Music app as a base as well, because they have Apple Music on Android as well.
They do, yeah.
So I imagine they probably base it off of that, just like they based it
Mm-hmm.
off of Apple Music for iOS. But yeah, it's very interesting that Apple, with all of its shortcuts that it's claiming for developers, is not making use of any of those when it
Yeah.
comes to making this available for other platforms
Just
or other of their platforms. Right? It should have been so
just check
easy
the
for them.
box. You just check
Yeah.
the box.
Yeah, on the note of that, it seems like Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro that did launch on iPad. Logic Pro is a SwiftUI app with
Oh,
UIKit
very
bits
cool.
versus no, sorry, I got that wrong. Logic Pro is a UIKit app with SwiftUI bits, and then
Okay,
Final Cut Pro is a SwiftUI app with UIKit bits.
that's cool.
Um,
I
and
didn't know that.
that kind of, I think it was Steve Trotman Smith who dug this up, but basically it kind of indicates which app has been in the works longer. Namely, Logic
Sure.
Pro has been in the works much longer and is much more mature in
Hmm.
its code base, and the fact that you can transfer files readily and things like that, versus Final Cut Pro is kind of a new file format
Right.
specific to the iPad, and it's simpler as a result. So yeah, it's
That's
interesting to
interesting, though.
see this, but yeah, that checkbox turns out it's not as simple that
Dang it,
Apple
Apple.
wanted to believe, and it's good that they are kind of experiencing that, right? Because
Yeah.
as they experience that, that's when they will go ahead and improve it for their own apps and for other people's apps, right?
Hmm.
When they just kind of make an API and they don't use it themselves, you kind of wonder, well, like what? How are we supposed to use this API? It's not super well thought out, right?
Yeah, definitely. As someone tasked with trying to work with checking the box for LumaFusion, it definitely was not plug and play. It was not just checking the box. There was tons of work to get it to be, even remotely like a native-ish Mac app. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I mean, even Ivory. Ivory is a Catalyst app, if you didn't know, unlike Tweetbot, which I believe was an AppKit app. And as a result of that, like text completions don't work. So I have a whole bunch of funky text completions for all the various smiley faces that we have as
Oh,
emoji. And none of those completions work in Ivory, which makes me sad. So I'm always like opening up Spotlight to type them there and then copy paste them, which I'm
oh
already
yeah.
used to, mind you, because Slack has piss poor completion support as well,
That's
and
fair.
that is neither a Mac app nor a Catalyst app. So that's that. Another fun fact about Slack: if you have an incorrectly spelled word, which I have frequently because I am dyslexic and can't spell for my life, um, if you try to get a spelling correction, it's just not going to give you good results, and sometimes it just picks a few of the results that could have been, and that is also mind-bogglingly silly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Thanks, Electron.
thanks Electron, and thanks Catalyst for not doing this properly either. Come on, Apple. Um,
Yeah, for real.
AppKit really did an amazing job at just like making so many things feel magical. Like that was the whole draw with Cocoa apps, right? Versus Carbon apps. Is sure you don't have everything from Carbon, but look at all the magic that Cocoa apps give you.
Yeah.
And you got that from day one on Mac OS 10. And like now, tons of years later, we have a crazy bloated app kit that has no documentation and no
Yeah.
specialized knowledge in order to like share with the next generation. So you either know it very well or you're just lost in
Hmm.
terms of like customizing it the way you want. Sure, you can build a simple UI, but if you want to customize it to like have some polish, good luck. And now we have different APIs like SwiftUI, Core Animation, and Catalyst that are basically all based off Core Animation. And those work differently from AppKit, tremendously differently, but they don't have that same magic that AppKit brought to the table. And that's the big shame with all of these transitions. Like if it's all kind of merging into one new framework, that's fine, but like don't leave out basic functionality that every Mac user is like depending on, right? In the
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. It reminds me of last week. I can't remember exactly what it was, but you know, one of the, I can't remember if it was a tweet or a toot or whatever, but it listed like six different ways to deal with a 3D object and like the same math from like six different APIs. It seemed
Yeah,
really cohesive.
it was with that new framework that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And I already forgot what that framework was.
It's
But that's the Apple of
spatial.
now. Yeah, spatial dot
Yeah.
framework. That's the Apple of now, right? It's we
Yeah.
have lots of ways of doing something, and none of them are the de facto way, and that's confusing to say the least. Like, fine, deprecate all these old things. You're great at deprecating stuff. You keep them around. Like no qualms with that. But if you're gonna introduce the same thing 17 times, at least
Yeah.
have some consistency there, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Anyways, talking about changes and deprecations, WKWebViews are not deprecated, thank goodness. But on iOS, they are no longer inspectable by default. So this is kind of like a PSA if you've ever used that functionality, and you're developing an iOS app and you have a WKWebView for whatever reason, login, this or that,
Hmm.
and you plug in your phone to your Mac or you enable developer mode or what have you. In Safari, you can go to the develop menu and inspect that view. It just shows up there and it's really magical and
That's
cool.
cool.
But you now have to opt into that, which is probably a good thing from a security point of view. Probably more from a DRM point of view than a security point of view, to be honest. But yeah, it's something to consider.
That's cool. To be honest, I didn't even know that you could inspect a web view through your phone through Safari. That's cool.
Yeah.
Through your Mac Safari. Yeah.
Uh, and in better news, we talked a few weeks ago about how Apple went and implemented a very interesting feature on Apple TV, where if a show has like a strobe effect, the player itself, so the tvOS operating system, can go ahead and detect that ahead of time, mute it down so that way it's not like it doesn't trigger anything.
Hmm.
And so there's like two parts: there's the detection, and then there's the correction for it. And they seem to have open sourced this as just a GitHub repo that you can go ahead and take that code and implement it in your own like render pathways, which is really really cool. They have implementations, I think, in a few different languages, namely MATLAB,
Hmm.
Mathematica, and Xcode, which is kind of wild that it's available in those other two.
Yeah.
But that's what researchers use, so that's what it's available in. But yeah, really, really cool that this is available for anyone to use.
Yeah. That's super cool of Apple to do for sure. Something I thought was interesting is like the README is super small, but it says um, purveyors of media content might want to detect the amount of flashing lights in video content in order to inform consumers of the media of the risk. So like an easy, I don't know. I mean, you see those warnings at the start of a show or in a YouTube video, like contains whatever flashing lights.
Mm-hmm.
Be cool to have that be automatic, or even say, or have some functionality to say like skip this part or whatever. So that's cool that they're open sourcing it. That's yeah, good
Yeah,
on
it gives
Apple.
people the options to do that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
they could just let the TV player, if they don't pull a Max. Oh God, there's so many Maxes. The HBO Max, which I still haven't
Mm,
downloaded. I guess, oh well, HBO. I am never gonna
shoot.
download your new app, and I'm no longer thinking about you. Sorry, last week tonight. Um, but uh, yeah, that's unless you pull them and like rewrite your own player, then
Hmm.
you get this for free, right, as a part of
Yeah, that's
tvOS.
sweet.
So that's one thing to consider. But if you do want to do additional processing and have a lot more control over things, maybe not even on tvOS, right, on the Mac app,
Yeah.
on a Mac app or something. This is like tooling for you to make use of that. So that's really, really cool.
Yep.
Another public service announcement, this time brought to light by Michael Tsai. Receipt validation signatures are being upgraded to SHA-256. So if you are checking receipts yourself and you are validating those signatures, which you should do, then you need to update your code because signatures after a certain date are going to have a different coding hash algorithm that is used. So just something to note.
I wanted to ask you, I don't know. Did you ever like jailbreak your phone like back in the day?
Oh, back in the day, I did once, and as a result, I had something running on my Mac that prevented me from updating a non-jailbroken phone like months later,
Oh.
and like I had to do shenanigans to get that thing to
Oh.
update because it like got semi-locked into a DFU state and it was not happy.
Gotcha.
So yes, I have jailbroken my phone like once or twice. I think pre iPhone 4S. So yeah, probably iPhone 4
Uh-huh.
ish days. And I have always regretted doing any amount of customization to any of the things I use for
I,
work.
yeah,
And that
that's
was
fair.
one of the cases.
That makes sense. So yes, back also I had an iPhone 4. That was actually my first iPhone was an iPhone 4. Back in high school, when I had no money and didn't want to pay for things, you could crack iPhone apps, and I think it just cracked the receipt or the certificate or something. Um, so I guess my question is it because people weren't validating the receipts, or is it because like the algorithm wasn't as secure and it could just be brute force? Do you know?
Most definitely, people weren't validating receipts.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It can be brute forced, and it takes a very long time, but it's on like a case by case basis, and definitely not for every app you want to just willy
Okay.
nilly install.
Yeah.
So that
Probably
would
just no
be,
validation.
yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Um, and yeah, that's not so much a thing anymore, but it
Yeah.
is something to consider. This is more for the cases where, uh, yeah, I guess just jailbroken, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Do people still jailbreak their phones? I haven't done it in like since high school, but
I think if you have an older phone, you can still do it. If you don't, then it's kind of hard.
okay.
But yeah,
I
that's
mean, probably not a bad idea to just update it to be more safe. So
mhm.
the receipt validation, that is.
Yep. This week's episode of Code Completion is brought to you by Weekly Swift Exercises. Learning Swift, there's no substitute for practicing. There's dozens, literally dozens of people Fernando has mentored through different programs, and he's seen it time and time again. After you learn the basics of programming, you slow down because learning through experience is demanding and painful. Increasing your confidence is key, and there's an easy way to do it: practice. Fernando's weekly exercises help you practice concepts like closures and protocols while implementing actual features like dark mode. It's free to join. Besides the exercises, Fernando sends one or two articles about learning Swift. Some are technical in nature, but most of them will help you in your career by teaching you things like practice, working as a team, and getting ready for your first job. Thanks again to Fernando and Weekly Swift Exercises for sponsoring Code Completion. Go to twitter.com/Swift Exercises to learn more. So Spencer, I have a code completion tip for you.
All right.
And this is one that I learned very recently. It's the Mirror API. The Mirror API, in my head, fell in the black magic bucket of Swift. Like,
Yes.
it's available and you'll probably never need to reach for it, kind of thing. However, in recent developments, I have been working on something on the side, and I may or may not talk about it anytime soon. But I needed to reach for the Mirror API,
hmm
and this was to inspect what properties a type had, and like what the types of those properties were. So using the Mirror API, I'm happy to report, is very, very easy. You just say mirror reflecting, and then you pass an object to there, and it will go ahead and figure out what properties that object has, whether it's a struct, like an enum, this or that, and you just can iterate over the children of that mirror, and it will just give you that information. And you can go deeper and deeper if you want, or you can stop there. It's exactly what Swift Playground uses to kind of give you breakdowns, or when you print, it gives you like a breakdown of an object. That's what this mirror API does. So I thought it was really, really cool. And yeah, definitely go check it out.
Nice, that's cool. Yeah, so I was gonna ask, and maybe it already does this with the like debug descriptions, but like I guess you could um, use Mirror to build out like a custom debug description fairly easy, and like not having to maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah,
Does
so
that make sense?
you wouldn't use mirror to make a description yourself. You would just kind of print yourself,
Yeah.
and it
Okay.
will do that for you. You might use mirror if you need to introspect properties at runtime, which is what I needed to do it for. And you can use custom reflectable to customize what properties get sent to mirror. So, for instance, array, instead of giving you its instance variables, which are not very interesting, it
hmm
will go ahead and give back all of the objects in that array as an array, and those would be the children. Same with
Okay.
dictionary. Instead of just giving you like, here's a buffer to memory, which is not
Yeah.
useful.
Okay.
So that's what custom reflectable does. And I can leave a link to that as well, because I think um, NS Hipster has a good article to that.
Cool. I was checking out NS Hipster today. It seems like they haven't updated anything since like 2020.
They have not.
That's a bummer.
I think
I like
Matatata.
NS Hipster.
And I say Matatata with love because the guy's name
Yes.
has 3 T's on it.
Yeah.
But I think he's moved on to other things,
Oh, gotcha.
rather than writing. But yeah, NSHipster remains a great resource
Yes.
to this day, even though has not been updated recently.
Yeah.
So now for the most exciting part of the show, our mini review. I'm just kidding. There's no mini review corner this week. There's WWDC prediction time. And I thought we might split it up into 3-ish sections: services, software, and hardware, in the order of excitement that we have for all of those things.
Okay.
So let's go through each section and kind of give our predictions. I have 3 predictions for services. Do you have any?
I don't think so. Yeah, I was trying to think of any services. I can't really. Yeah, no. Let's hear yours though.
Okay, so the first one I have is an increased iCloud quota. Currently,
Oh, okay.
it's 2 terabytes. You can upgrade that to 4 if you're an Apple One and you also buy 2 terabytes.
Right.
If you're an Apple One Premium something subscriber.
Yeah.
So that gets you at 4. I have very recently passed the 2.1 terabyte
Wow.
threshold. And this is because my photo album is now filled with baby pictures
Yes,
and
that makes
videos.
sense.
So now not only just cats, but cats and babies. And that is really ballooning the size of my photo library. So I am more hoping than like correctly hypothesizing and predicting that Apple will increase iCloud quotas. But I think it's about time that they think about
hmm
increasing iCloud quotas. I think that would be like a good thing to do.
I could see like a 5 or maybe a 10 terabyte tier, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I would it would kind of make sense. It got me thinking when you said you had all the photos. Now we're dealing with 48 megapixel photos, so they're like 4 times larger. Kind of makes sense to up the quota. I can definitely see that
Yeah.
being.
I
Yeah,
didn't even
yeah.
think of that aspect of it. I was just thinking
They're
like,
like 90 megabytes a piece or something. I mean, they're very large photos now.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, and because it just takes a handful of those to really fill up your storage, and we tend to take a lot of pictures nowadays.
Yeah,
Well,
and
not just
4K
nowadays, but
60.
our
Yeah,
cameras are better and better. Is my point.
yeah.
So we rely on them more and more. Um,
ProRes.
yeah.
Definitely can see that.
Definitely hoping for that one. So that's the number one.
Okay.
The number two, and this one's kind of like out of left field, but it may be something that happens with the third thing that I'm about to propose. But let's stick to the second one. App
Okay.
subscriptions, kind of like Apple Arcade, where instead of dealing with needing to subscribe to all these individual apps, especially for smaller ones that don't necessarily have ongoing service components to them. It could be a great way of uh, making sure that app developers get like paid and they get exposure by having like a specific section of app review carved out for just that. And you can kind of subscribe to all these apps ad free, subscription free, and just use them, right? This is the plus version of those apps. I hope Apple improves App Store Connect so they don't need to do that. And you can just have an app on both. But yeah, I think that would be a really, really cool thing that could be made available. Like I would subscribe to that immediately, probably because I have Apple One. But if I didn't have Apple One, that could be a great way of essentially making sure that a bunch of small app developers, they can continue to do great work and get paid in the process, right?
Mm-hmm. So are you saying it would be like a compilation of a bunch of apps from a bunch of app developers, or are you saying it's more like the affinity approach, where it's like you buy the thing and you get all the affinity apps,
I
but
would
it's like
say
for the company
I would say
only? Does that
it's
make sense?
not it's a bunch of different developers, kind of like
Okay.
there's one for the Mac, and
Hmm.
I'm forgetting what
It's
it's
like
called,
set
Set
app
App.
or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a horrible name, but they
Yeah.
apparently do good work. So I'm not going to bash them for that. But that essentially is a one
Yeah.
subscription you pay for, and you can use any one
All
of
of those apps.
those apps. And it's kind of banking on the fact that, hey, you're a single person, you're not capable of using all these apps at once, and
Yeah.
therefore it's a fair trade-off, right? The amount of time you spend in one of these apps versus another, that's how much that app developer will get paid as a result of that. So this can be
That'd be
something
cool.
similar directly from Apple.
So
um,
like a I don't know, productivity group, and so you get like a PDF reader and like a bunch of other stuff that's like in the same realm ish type of
I'm
thing.
not even talking about group. I'm just talking about like as a whole. You
Oh,
subscribe to
okay.
this thing. Any developers that are part of that thing, you can download their apps and use them. No
That'd be cool.
extra
So I guess it
purchases or
would just
anything.
be like you're saying, it's just based off time about how much they get paid from the
Y-
subscription.
Yeah, and maybe less about time and more about like what kind of app it is, because time is a hard thing to
Fair.
pin down.
Good
If
point.
it's an alarm app, you never use it, you never open it, but you're constantly using it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's something that's a little bit harder to kind of nail down. But I think Apple Arcade has that nuance built in, right?
Hmm.
There are games that suck up a bunch of your time, and then there are games that are quick and to the point. And both of those are kind of hopefully, we have no idea how our Apple Arcade works,
Yeah.
but they're hopefully weighed appropriately such that it's not time based, it's kind of like value based.
Hmm.
Like
Okay.
how much value is the user getting out of this, and use that as a weight across multiple
Hmm.
things. And that's up to Apple to figure out with individual developers what kind of makes sense and uh,
Yeah.
what's the right
That's
balance there. So instead of that for games, that for apps is essentially
cool.
what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
And this can allow Apple to do all sorts of interesting things, like be much more stringent on app review, for instance, and make sure that there aren't 17 fart apps in there,
Yeah.
and that there aren't any fart apps in there, right? That's
Yeah.
that's something that Apple can do, and they can kind of pride themselves on making sure that it's just the cream of the crop in there, and the rest of the App Store, who knows?
Yeah. If the listeners can't tell, I think we just really want some app store reform. We have shot so many ideas over like the last 2 or 3 years, man. Something's got to change. I think that'd be a really cool idea.
So I guess it's number 3, App Store overall.
Oh, okay.
um,
Yeah.
so I was sharing this beauty with Spencer, and if you're listening to the podcast rather than watching it, which most people do, this is the app review guidelines, the comic book, shared at WWDC 16. This is edition
Nice.
number 1 of 1. They never made a number 2 or 3 that I know of. And it's basically a comic book, so I can show you. But the comic bubbles are just the app review guidelines, like verbatim. So
That's
this guy
awesome,
is
dude.
saying the lists below are not exhaustive, and your submission may trigger a change or update to our process policies. But here are some additional do's and don'ts to keep in mind. And then this other guy is thinking to himself, 1, displaying your own apps for purchase or promotion within your app, provided the app is not merely a catalog of your apps. And he's giving this dude a haircut, by the way, to give you some visuals.
Nice.
Uh,
Yes.
so there are 5 comics in this. There's safety, there's performance or performance in Japanese underneath it. There's business, design, and legal.
Oh,
And
legal sounds so fun.
legal's in black and white, and it's kind of like a noir
Oh, a
aesthetic.
noir. Yeah. Okay.
So
That's cool.
yeah, they're all in different styles. The art is amazing. The text obviously does not match up with anything, so it does make you think about how on earth they put this together. But I am proposing, I want to throw this, but I think it's something worth keeping in good condition. I was about to throw it over my shoulder. Crazy YouTuber style, which we're not. But yeah, App Store is probably going to get an overhaul. In no reason due to the EU and many other countries
No, not at all.
getting very upset at Apple and Apple needing to make a change, right? So that's number 3. I think it falls under services.
I'd
They
say
definitely
so.
categorize it on their earnings. They're going to talk about how much Apple is paying developers and all that, and all of that.
Yay.
So yeah, if Apple wants to pay developers, then I think they should do it via an app subscription thing like Apple Arcade. Then that is Apple paying developers. They're entering into individual contracts and making things good and being very very cutthroat about it. For everything else, I think Apple should kind of loosen the
Shell
floodgates
out.
because they're already doing
Yeah.
a bad job at making sure bad stuff doesn't appear on there. And I think that's going to be the way to do it.
I I'm so hopeful that that happens. I don't know if it will happen, but yeah, you're right. Something has to change with the EU stuff. So I just hope they're not like, oh, yep, this only works in the EU. Sorry, all of their whatever their changes end up being. I don't know.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I have no plans on distributing any iOS app outside the App Store. Like it's
Yeah.
not for me, and it most definitely is for Facebook. But Apple still has one final chance to kind of subvert these problems by like opening something significantly and closing off something else. So this is an
Yep.
opportunity to do both at once, right? Have their cake and eat it too, kind of thing. And if they do get to the point where they need to like go all in on side loading, that's going to be something they need to do, right?
Yep.
But only Apple can prevent that. They have the means. They just have the greed that's preventing it. I would say. I really don't know.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree.
Yeah. So those were my predictions for services. We'll see. I hope it's not another 20 minutes of Apple Music because that's what happened one
Oh my
WWDC.
gosh,
And I was
yes.
literally falling asleep during that because I stayed up all night like an idiot. Did I learn that the next year I should not stay up all night? No, I did not. I have stayed up all night for most WWDCs that were in person. And I had a great fun doing that. But yeah, the Apple Music part segment did put me to sleep, quite literally.
No doubt.
In a giant auditorium where loud music was blasting to give you an idea of how interested I was. Yeah, these are a little more closely relevant to me, and looking forward to some of them, hopefully. But with that, on to something a little more interesting to us, software. What do you have, Spencer?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say there's gonna be a new version of iOS, a new version of macOS,
You think two operating systems?
two,
Just two?
even iPad OS probably, and maybe even
Three?
tvOS. I know. Oh, and
Four?
don't forget Watch OS,
Oh
man.
my
Come
gosh.
on. I
Five
know,
operating systems? Apple, how
but
can you do this?
really, we may get XROS or Bros, as it is sometimes called, depending on your phone.
This is my computer, by the way.
Oh, your computer. Sorry. Um, okay, so I wanted to talk about the actual, I guess you could call it, announcement page or event page for DubDub.
Hmm.
Um, interesting tagline. I can't remember what the last one was. It was all right. But this one, it says "Code New Worlds." So that's like
Ooh.
I know that kind of got me thinking. Like, are we entering this whatever mixed reality, whatever it ends up being? Uh, I thought the tagline was interesting, and so along with hardware, which we will get to, there could be a completely new operating system for a completely new device.
So you think that this is not going to get into the nitty gritty here? You think that this is not going to be an offshoot of iOS like iPadOS basically is? This is going to be a different operating system entirely. It's not going to be like you have an iOS app and that's
I
also an iPad app at the same time. This is going to be
I mean,
you submit something different to App Store Connect.
I would say so. I don't. I mean, I'm not really in like the AR VR scene or anything, but I can't really see how you could easily adapt a an iOS app that's meant for touches to something that you wear on your face. I mean, I'm sure there will be hand interaction, but it would be weird to like be going like this in front of you all the time. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think it's going to be something new. Uh,
Yeah,
whatever that ends up being, not sure, but yeah, I think it'll be a new OS.
interesting. Um, to be clear to everyone, this is our not absolutely or not our first WWDC rodeo. We know for sure that the taglines have no correlation
Yeah,
to
no,
what
yeah.
actually gets announced
I mean, that's
because
never, yeah,
it's
that's never
never
how
been
it
the
is.
case and it never
Nope.
will
Yep.
because those teams work in silos and for a reason so that way they don't influence each other and leak stuff unexpectedly. But yeah, the tagline is always a fun little thing and people always have
Speculation.
fun with the artwork is like, oh, this has new artwork, we're gonna see goggles this year. Do you remember
Yeah.
that one?
Yeah.
No, we just had some pretty looking artwork that we never got to see the
Yeah.
reality of.
But okay, counterpoint. If you go onto Safari and you go to this web page on your phone, you can view the logo in AR, man. They're hinting at something there, you know.
It's happening at
It's
Apple Park.
what? No way. And it tells you the date and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll go next.
Okay.
Uh, as I have heavily predicted many times before, I think we're definitely going to see new features coming to Swift, namely Swift
What?
macros and
No
variadic
way.
generics. I think this is the time that we are going to see a lot of that, just like we saw a lot of Swift concurrency when that got announced a few years
Yeah.
back. So I think it was just last year, right? It was not last the year before
Mm,
last year that it got announced.
yes, I think so.
Yeah. And we basically got to watch it be developed up until that announcement. So I think
Yeah.
we're going to see the same thing with Swift macros, maybe observability, which uses them, and variadic generics. That is going to be part of the sessions. And they'll probably show off the variadic generics as like, hey, Swift UI, you no longer limited to 10 views.
Yeah,
Hurrah! Loud
exactly.
applause. That's what's going to get everyone. And it's all thanks to those variadic generics, everyone.
Woohoo. Yeah.
So yeah, that's my number one. Uh,
Nice.
that's my first pick for software. What else do you have?
Nice. I kind of in a similar vein. I think I said this last year, and I can't really remember if it actually happened. Uh, but I would love for just more improvements in Swift UI in general, just to make it a little bit, I don't know, nicer to deal. Like variadic generic thing would be sweet, but I'm talking like more like a native map view or something like that, like just adding to the feature set of SwiftUI in general.
Hmm.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, similarly to that, and just building on this one, I had SwiftUI revamped on macOS because it seems
Mm,
like people that love SwiftUI have the most trouble with it on macOS because it works really, really well on watchOS, which it was built for.
yeah.
It works mostly well for iOS, which most of the energy went into, right? But then it kind of falls apart on macOS because
Yeah.
it's just kind of like checking a checkbox and then moving away from that. And
Yeah.
Apple learned that the hard way, building shortcuts and things like that, or settings. Oh boy, settings. I'm
We
not
don't
going to make
talk
a
about
prediction with
settings.
settings unless Spencer has one, but yeah, it's SwiftUI has some problems on
Yeah.
macOS, and this is an excellent avenue for Apple to tell people and reassure them that they doubled down. They've learned from the
Yeah.
past year because it took them a year to make a new OS update to fix the settings app, and yeah, that's my addition to that.
Yeah, that's good. It's just so funny how I feel like macOS is just left to the wayside because iOS is the money earner. I
Uh,
don't know. It's
First
annoying.
comes iOS, then Android, as we own.
Uh, obviously,
Obviously.
watch the next one will be tvOS. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Mac OS is
I
always last.
It's so weird, dude. Um, I don't have any other software updates. I mean, like, I guess we'll probably get Swift 5.9 or whatever as a release with the new version of Xcode. There, I saw that there was a release candidate. I don't assume that's going to be what's actually. Yeah, it's
No,
just a
that's
point one
just
release.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I have a few more for software.
Okay.
Some on device large language model. So that means
Oh, that'd be
that
cool.
instead of relying on OpenAI for much more limited tasks, maybe we can have something on device. Maybe it doesn't talk back to us, right? Maybe it's just capable of a much more limited vocabulary of actions, right? But if that's something that a developer can fine tune for their app, then that is something that can be super
Oh,
powerful. Namely, hey, I want a home screen, and I think ATP brought this up and uh, kind of saw the thought experiment to its ultimate conclusion. But it's like, hey, if I have a home screen, can you like add these widgets to it? And it would
hmm,
just take natural human speech and make a home screen with those widgets. So that's the sort of
that'd be
thing
cool.
that could be really, really cool and definitely possible, right? It doesn't need to be on the level of ChatGPT to pull that off, especially if it's
Sure.
not kind of talking back to you and doing that sort of thing. In fact, it might not even be a large language model in that case. It's just a standard machine learning model that
Hmm.
just uses English text as input and then will go ahead and have an output, much like standard diffusion. You type English
Hmm.
and you get an image. Well, this would be you type English and you get a widget layout, right? Something that
Right.
can be trained is doable on device. Big standard diffusion is doable on device and
Yeah.
doesn't need to like mimic humans at all. So I think on some version of that on device for some version of Apple's own apps is something that we might see. An improved Siri in the cloud that's based on an
Uh huh.
actual large language model, that would be amazing, right? Siri, we kind of all
Yeah.
see it as something that has problems, is incapable of kind of doing basic things. Large language models maybe are not the solution to that, right? Because they kind of
Yeah.
will exponentially make worse what you're asking for if you're just asking for simple things, right?
Yeah.
But a revamped Siri is definitely something that we need, and we've heard lots and lots of rumors that we haven't even talked about much on the show that maybe that's getting a revamp, and that'd be really cool to see at this year.
Yeah. I agree. I think, yeah, like Siri is. Yeah, well, I don't really think there's really any good like voice assistant. I don't know. Maybe Google Assistant's good, but like I don't think any, any on phone voice assistant is that great. So I can definitely see something like a large language model juicing that up. I think, just from messing with Chat GPT, there would definitely have to be like filters attached to what it could do, or limitations. I don't know.
It's
It can
it's not
hallucinate
so.
and get us into some interesting stuff.
Yeah, but it's not so much that, like, I don't think a large language model is the solution here, because just because ChatGPT tells you that it's doing something doesn't mean that's happening. In fact, it's not. We would need to have a special way of hooking up the output to do something that on the user's
Yeah,
device, and that's what Siri is good at for the limitations
true.
that it can do. Right?
So it would
Um,
just have to synthesize an intent, basically.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll
yeah, that
see.
makes sense.
Maybe it's gonna happen. Maybe not. Uh,
Yeah, I can't imagine that they're not working on something like that. I mean,
just maybe not this year.
I no, I don't know, honestly, but just thinking back to all of the I always forget what they're called, but in Apple Silicon there are like ML cores, right?
Hmm.
They're doing, trillions of operations per second or whatever it is. So I can't imagine that Apple Silicon isn't already sort of, whether it's, I mean, if they were going to do something on device, that it would probably be capable of doing that in
Hmm.
semi-ish real time or whatever.
Well,
So
you
that'd be
just
cool.
need trillions of bytes of RAM to hold the large language model. That's the
Well,
problem.
yeah, I know, and that's why I see that you said like something in the cloud as well for like an actual large language model, but like the ML, the model for doing something simpler. Yeah, I can see that.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy that you can do stable diffusion on an iPhone. It takes forever compared to a computer, but yeah, it's definitely possible, and that's super cool. It'd be fun to have something like that. I don't know how Apple would incorporate it in the Notes app or something, but it'd be fun to have something like stable diffusion just built in.
Definitely. Next on my software list, I have Xcode for iPad with no notes. Just that would
We
be
can keep hoping every year.
yeah, something a little bit more than Swift Playgrounds,
Hmm.
that we kind of have. I think Xcode for iPad, though, has a ramification that Apple has kind of learned, is that uh, we need a way for pro apps on the Mac to kind of find their way onto the iPad,
Hmm.
and forcing them to rewrite is one solution. Like Final Cut Pro did that, right?
Yep.
But having an avenue where something can adapt might be another one, right? So that's something worth considering. I don't know. I don't think we're going to see it. Actually, I have to think because it's my prediction. Gosh darn it! So I do think we're going to see it. But
Okay.
it's very low
Yeah.
confidence that it's going to happen.
So, I mean, I can see it being possible, especially now with um, the M series being in an iPad, right? Like, if you can run Xcode on an M1 MacBook Air, in theory, you should be able to run it on iPad OS. Uh, I don't know if that would come in the form of like only being able to run iPad apps, or if it would be something like you could actually, run a simulator on an iPad. I don't know. It'd be kind of cool. Um, yeah, I mean, it has the power in theory to do it. It's the same chip that's in a MacBook Air, so
So, possibly with more RAM than a Mac, right?
that's true. Yeah,
Better screen,
yeah.
better input device, same input device in many cases.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's no excuse at this point that
It's
we
just a
couldn't.
software thing
It's just a
for sure.
software thing. It's a decision that Apple has made. It's not even an architectural thing, I would say, at this point.
Nope.
It's purely they decided not to do it, so it didn't happen yet. I think that there's motivation for it to happen, especially if you can just pick up an iPad and plug it into a monitor, right? Um,
Yeah, dude. Can you imagine though? Like, I mean, I don't know how common it is now, but like my high school had, whatever it was, like an iPad 3 or whatever. Uh, if you could just have an iPad and like have and that be the device for whatever your programming class in high school was. I don't know. I think that would be like a good I guess incentive for schools to buy iPads over like Chromebooks or something.
Mhm.
I don't
And
know.
heck, it might be something limited to the iPad Pros, and then that's a
Sure.
reason to get an iPad Pro
Hey,
over a regular iPad. Because currently, there's no freaking reason um, to go for
but
one or the
the
other.
Liquid Retina XDR display, Dimitri, the 1500 nits,
Yeah,
man.
definitely.
Yeah.
I'd like to sear my eyeballs out, please.
Yeah.
Um, but searing eyeballs aside, like I do think that there would be good use out of this, right?
Yeah.
Namely, your entire developer audience would instantly buy iPads for their own use for once,
Yep.
because a lot of them don't. Like I use an iPad daily to read and to watch YouTube. That is what I do on an iPad.
That's what
Uh,
a tablet is. Yeah.
yeah, it's very sad that I can't do anything else because everything is kind of in this miserable mixture of like full screen slash. I still didn't try Stage Manager. I just
Yeah, I
heard horror
haven't either.
stories. I haven't found where to turn it on, and I haven't gone looking for the first time. So I'm just waiting for it to naturally exist, and
And
it hasn't.
that's like the sad part. Unless you're doing something like using Final Cut Pro or Logic or like a pro level app on the
Which don't
iPad.
support Stage Manager.
Yes, right. Yeah. My point is, like, when are you going to use the full capability of the M2 in an iPad Pro? Like, most people just use it to watch YouTube and read,
But
and that's
Spencer, this app is severely under optimized and it needs the full M2 to load its data store
okay.
from
Well,
a plist.
that's a different story. But hey, in a
Uh,
perfect world,
yeah. So I have one more
okay.
prediction, and that is this is the year we're going to see a Swifty replacement for core data. And I say that as someone who is writing
Ooh.
a Swifty replacement for core data as a secret side project that I'm not going to give any more details to. But
So are
that
you just like wanting to be Sherlocked?
No, I just think I'm going to be Sherlock for the fact that I decided to do
Ah,
this.
I see.
So you have me to thank when a Swifty version of Core
Hmm.
Data comes out. I'm still going to continue my version because I think that the Swifty version of Core Data is going to still be built on Core Data and not going to be something that I am interested in using. Um,
Probably.
so this is something that I will still have a particular use for. So, but I do think that it's coming. I think that it has had to come for a number of years at this point, right?
Yeah. So you're saying like I guess just an abstraction layer over core data um to make it more easy, I guess?
I would say a reimplementation of the front end for core data.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So instead of like having confusing ideas of what an optional is, right?
Yes.
That would kind of be all cleaned up.
Okay.
But it
Okay.
would still be the same core data that is
Under
compatible
the hood.
with the
Sure.
existing core data that you've been using.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, we've had interesting discussions about persistence in the last couple of days. No one really seems to like it very much. So
Oh boy. Okay, on to hardware, and I'm gonna start us off because I have a feeling that the rest of our items are identical. So I needed to get this one in while it's still
okay.
unique. Apple is going to have, along with the other new thing that we're going to talk about in a bit,
Uh-huh.
come out with a new mouse that has USB C,
But
hopefully in
still
a
on the bottom.
sensible size.
Still gonna be on the bottom, dude. You can't take the Johnny Ive out of the mouse, dude.
Under every seat at WWDC Stadium is going to be a new Apple mouse.
Be sweet.
Um,
Yeah, it'd be kind of nice though to have new peripherals with just USB C, like a keyboard and for me, especially a trackpad.
mhm. Yeah, I think they're coming. It's just a matter of time. Probably, hopefully, I thought they would have come already with the new keyboards that had the Touch ID, but they
Hmm.
didn't. Instead, we got very nice braided lightning cables that my cat chewed
Yeah.
through. So that's nice.
Aha.
But yeah, I do think that a new mouse needs to come. I would hope that this one supports Qi charging.
That would be
Maybe
so
that's the
good.
solution. So it still has a USB-C on the bottom when you need it.
Hmm.
But otherwise, just kind of put it on the puck that's on your desk that you usually use for your phone when you're
Hmm.
not using it, and it just kind of tops up. That is something I could totally get behind. Of course,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to use it at the same time as like when
Yeah,
the puck
but
is not,
it's
because it's gonna be Apple and people are gonna complain they got that. I don't care. I would say having the option to just put it on a puck is way better than not.
oh yeah.
And it's
Just
like a
throw it
no
on there at
brainer.
the end of the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a no brainer. Just put a coil and just magnet, clunk, perfect.
Yep.
MagSafe, different MagSafe. That's my number one. That's my first prediction for new hardware.
Nice. That's cool. I would love that as well. Yeah, so the obvious one, the headset, right? We'll see.
It's gonna
I don't know.
happen.
The
So,
tagline, Dimitri, the taglines are always right. I'm just kidding.
So Apple Reality Headset. That's what they're probably going to call it, right? We of course have no idea what they're going to
Yeah.
call it, but that's the name on the streets, as people like to say. It looks like very fancy ski goggles,
Yeah.
which I guess is better than hunk of black plastic that people would otherwise have put. That said, you need the hunk of black plastic for the depth, right, to get the lenses working.
Right.
So we'll see if Apple is actually able to make it all curved. But it would be really cool if it is. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think they have some like fundamental design challenges to overcome. The most important of which for me is how do you see if you are visually impaired, like both of us are? Do they? Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe
Can
the
I?
version 1 is not for us, right? Or maybe we have to
Yeah,
clunk it over our glasses.
that's the
Um,
worst, dude.
which I
It's
always
so
hate
bad.
while skiing is getting the
Yes.
goggles over the glasses. And this is made worse by the fact that I do have smart ski goggles from like 2008. I was gonna say 28 is like 10, but it's even earlier than that.
Nope.
They are really really old, and they have a little tiny prism projected screen
Mhm.
like way down here under the glasses, so I can wear glasses and see in
Oh,
front of me, but not see the little
but
prism,
not that.
or like get my glasses like this, like an old person reading a book.
Amazing. Yeah.
Is what I'm reminded of. Uh, or I can just wear contacts while I'm skiing. So that's what I've done, is I've just worn contacts anytime I
Yeah.
ski. So now every time I get a new glasses prescription, I nab those free contacts that they give me, and I use them
Nice.
that year when I go skiing. And that's the only time I wear contacts. And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, do you need help putting them on?" I was like, "No, I will remember, maybe." Because I always forget.
Contacts are the worst, dude.
Or my eyes forget. My hands know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good
So,
stuff.
yeah, we'll see. It'll be. I mean, we've talked about it before. I don't know how much new stuff there is to talk about, but
Well, they say the current rumors are saying dual M2, whatever that means.
that's insane, dude. Well, I guess that justifies the $3,000 price
I mean, $40
and the
per chip,
screens.
right?
Yeah.
And then you have two 4K by 4K
OLED.
screens.
Yeah.
Which, to remind
Holy
you, a 4K screen, that's just the vertical, not the horizontal.
Yeah.
That's more like 2K.
Yeah.
So this is 8 times
8K.
what a 4K display actually is.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude.
That would have to refresh at least 90 frames per
Yep.
second. Probably just going to go up to 120.
Hopefully.
Considering Apple's current capabilities with screen refresh.
Promotion in the headset. Yay. Yeah.
And foveated rendering. Which if
Which
you don't
so
know,
cool.
it just renders what you're looking at. And renders everything else as blurry because it doesn't. Your eyes don't need it. So if it can update at 120 frames per second, then as your eye scans the screen, it can update the resolution while your eye is moving, and therefore can get away with needing to render a stupid amount of millions of pixels to kind of really get a grasp of what it's looking at. Right? It would be around 32 million pixels. Am I getting that math right?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, 16 million each. Yeah,
that's a lot of pixels. So if
that's a
your app
lot.
needs to render all those pixels all the time, that's a big deal. If it just needs to do a fraction of them in good quality and the rest of them bad quality, you can get away with a whole lot more.
Yeah,
Especially if you want to like show off some good gaming, which is what most people think of when they're thinking of like a VR headset. So
right.
either Apple is not going to talk about gaming or they are, right? It's one of those two, and
Yeah.
they have to do it great.
So, along those lines, someone, I think it was on Twitter. I also saw in like a Utah developer Slack channel that uh, the game No Man's Sky just got ported to macOS and in Steam, and also that it shows that it's like VR capable, but that could just be like normal VR headset capable.
Hmm.
But if they're porting it, like the timing is like slightly suspicious, and if it is already VR capable, maybe that's like a like the Resident Evil that they've been showing off like the last three WWDCs or whatever uh, for the Max. Maybe that's like their headline gain for the headset if they do highlight gaming.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yep.
It would definitely be a great game, like experience other worlds, literally.
Yes. Haha.
Via this game, just as long as it renders well, right? And a
Yeah.
dual M2 might not be enough to render No Man's
That's
Sky well.
yeah.
I hear it's very very demanding. That said, if it only needs to render a little tiny thing that your eyeball's looking at,
Yeah.
and the rest can be blurry, then maybe it can get away with doing a great job. Um,
Yeah. That's what I keep coming back to is like, okay, dual M2s, like the M series chips like the base M series chips graphics aren't like the GPU. I mean, it doesn't have that many GPU cores, but again, if it is foveated rendering, maybe that makes it just powerful enough. I mean, it does have to crank out hopefully like 120 frames per second, so you're at least doubling the intensity, just you know resolution aside. So
And maybe you have two M2s, one per eye, right? They just keep
yeah,
them in sync for the frame display. But
yeah,
otherwise, you upload the same textures to both of them and just have a slightly different camera angle
yeah,
for that stereoscopic effect.
we shall see.
We shall see. Okay, next on the hardware list, and this is something that we probably have both been wondering about because we discussed it earlier in the show. New Mac Pro.
Yeah.
Is it going to happen? Is it just going to be a Mac Studio? We don't know, but I think that they are probably going to call something a Mac Pro, whether it's what people have expected Mac Pros to look like up
Oh,
until now, or if it's just basically a little chunkier Mac Studio with some different expandability, namely like a PCI Express card or two
uh-huh.
that doesn't support the things that you think it does, but it does support the capture cards and the
Yeah.
audio like thingies,
Right.
not GPUs and not
Yeah.
expandable RAM. So
Interesting. I was thinking about that. I don't know if I guess this is all dependent on if they're doing the headset or not. I don't think they'll do both at the same time. Maybe in November.
hmm.
I don't know. That's my take is like if the headset is going to be the big hardware launch, they'll my thing is they'll probably just refresh the Mac Studio and maybe the MacBook Pro and that's it for now.
So just refreshes of like existing things. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that
I don't
makes
know. It
sense.
feels like it would steal the thunder a little bit if they're like, but also the Mac Pro. I don't know.
I don't think the Mac Pro is stealing the thunder from anything. It's a cool thing that exists that no one will buy.
It's fair. Yeah.
Whereas the VR thing is a cool thing that exists that probably also no one will buy.
If
Um,
it's $3,000, yep.
yep. So I guess before anything is announced, assuming a VR headset is announced and you need to pre-order one now or not get one until December, are you pre-ordering one?
No,
No.
not if it's $3,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
I maybe am. We will
Okay.
see. It depends on eyesight compatibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
but I will likely pre-order and then cancel if eyesight compatibility is problematic.
Yeah. That's cool. If if they have some, way of changing the diopter or whatever in it, I'm sure they'll say that.
Hmm.
I don't know during the thing, but
Yeah. Tim Apple is, if he's going to be wearing one, then
exactly.
he needs eyesight compatibility.
I would love
So
to know like the ratio of people with eyesight problems in Apple and those who don't, because it's like
I
in the tech
think I
industry, I think
think
pretty
more
much
people
everyone
need
does.
glasses than people don't
Like
nowadays.
in general,
In
that's
general,
crazy.
yeah,
Wow.
because and for those who don't know, the whole reason why is because our eyesight develops thank thanks to UV radiation from the sun. Like you need to be
Uh-huh.
physically outside getting a ton of Prop 65, known to the state of California cause cancer,
Hey.
into your eyeballs. Otherwise, your eyeballs don't develop, and you get near farsighted, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
You need glasses, and that because we no longer spend our youths outside, we now spend them learning things and being smarter, which is a good trade-off, to be fair.
I agree. Yeah.
We need glasses. So the whole thing of like, oh, the person that wears glasses is smarter, which was a joke in the 60s, is probably true, because people
Of underdeveloped eyes.
who got an education and therefore spent most of their childhood indoors have underdeveloped eyes that need glasses, versus those that did not get an education tended to be fine without glasses. That might take a reversing trend as some countries are
Hmm.
noticing this and they are therefore pushing for more of the curriculum to be outside for developing
Oh,
children. But we have, as a collective society, found out that that is the reason why all of a sudden basically everyone needs glasses, or contacts, but
yeah.
um, contacts suck.
They
Just bringing
suck,
that out
dude.
there.
Agreed.
Um, so yeah, I don't think I have anything else. I don't think we're going to see new displays. I think the
No.
only new displays we're seeing are from the reality headset that will give us infinite displays. So I'm looking forward to
Hmm.
that. Um,
That's the dream.
That's the dream. If it turns out that we can order as developers these reality headsets early,
Hmm.
and I try one on and I get motion sickness immediately, which I 100% think will also happen, I may also be returning it in that situation. Um,
Yeah.
but definitely looking forward to that as the cool new headlining hardware thing for this year. Um,
Yep.
and yeah, it's gonna be interesting.
Yep, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. If Apple is going to do this, they're actually doing a headset, whether it's now or in the future. You'd like have to hope that they uh, overcome those like fundamental problems of motion sickness, of
Eyesight.
of eyesight. Like it's it's like so fundamental. And like I bought an Oculus, the first version of the Oculus Rift, and I sold it like a couple months later because one, I had to wear contacts and I hate them, but two, yeah, it made me motion sick because it can't keep up. And it's, you have to hope that if Apple's going to do it, they're going to actually do it right and solve these fundamental problems that like everyone gets. It's like everyone will get sick. It's not like an issue of do you get motion sick playing video games. It's like you will get motion sick. So
Yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to trying it out. Like I've never really
yeah,
used AR VR in any capacity beyond trying it one time at an anime expo, and it was uh, not super appropriate because it was an anime expo. So that was the only experience I had in AR, not AR, just pure VR. It was
VR, yeah,
funny, and it was not private, thankfully, because it would have been very awkward. But I want to try the real use case. I want to try using it as a replacement for needing a whole bunch of screens to have
yes,
my brain
exactly.
splattered, right? If I can splatter my brain in this side of my office and then I can walk away from it and come back to it and it's still there, perfect. That's
So
exactly what I
cool.
want out of something.
Yeah,
So that could be my use case, right? Just like I use an
Yeah.
iPad for one or two things. If this thing costs less than an additional Pro Display XDR, then like, and it's getting me way more real estate, then that's worth it to me, right? For that one use case. And that is one of the things that they talked about, right?
Yeah.
Of potentially using it as a screen for your Mac. We'll see if it's limited in that regard or if
Yeah.
it's capable,
That's, I
but
think,
that's what
that
we're gonna see.
yeah, that would be like my number one use cases. Can I, yeah, have an infinite display? And I think that's the dream for like a lot of people.
A lot of
Um,
computer users, right?
yeah, I think that, I mean, I don't know what else I would really use it for. I mean, when I had the Rift, you can, pull up YouTube and you're like sitting in a theater and it's cool, but like that would be fun. But yeah, like watching movies would be cool. But yeah, just having an infinite canvas of a computer would be
Maybe
the
that's
dream.
why SharePlay is a thing, right? Because otherwise
Yeah.
you're watching it on your own, but if someone else has it right next to you, then you can share it with them.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good foundation for potential uses of it for sure.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's
Yep.
something that's going to come out soon. Looking forward to it. As always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Please be sure to follow us on mastodon.social at code completion to know when new episodes go live, and feel free to toot at us if there's ever a topic you'd like for us to dig into. Most importantly, as a small podcast, please be sure to share this with your friends and family who are also interested in any part of the process of app development. It's your support that enables us to continue doing this, and we hope to grow a healthy community around everything we discuss. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who is at Spencer C. Curtis. That's SPENCRCCURTIS, for joining me this week. My name, once again, is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buniol. That's DIMITRIBOUNIOL. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye. But yeah, I've been unable to play because I'm trying to code while also taking care of a human child that does not know how to be a human yet.
Yes.
And oh boy, is that hard.
Oh, I
Um,
bet.
because it's not just like, oh, you'll have time, like downtime. It's this is a 100% full time endeavor of making sure that even if the child is sleeping, that they are comfortable, that they have everything that they need, and when they are sleeping, that means that you have maybe an hour to do anything.
Hmm.
But then that hour is interrupted quickly by needing to change diapers, needing to make sure that they're not too hot, not too cold, making sure that they're fed, and then another hour went by, and then it's like, okay,
Yep.
maybe I get another hour, but you don't know if you're going to get another hour, so you sit tight. So I have spent all that time watching ZFG, and if you don't know who ZFG is, ZFG is a Zelda speedrunner who has been playing Tears of the Kingdom in like 13-hour increments,
Dude.
split up on YouTube, and 6 hours at a time. So like I spend a good 6 hour chunk of my evening trying to care for a baby who is either cranky or something is wrong. So I'm just like walking around, going back and forth, so that way the thing is content, and watching that. So that's
Nice.
my Zelda-ing for the past week ish has been that, and not so much playing. But yeah,
Nice. That's cool. I've not done much Zelda-ing, but I did sometime last week uh try out Yuzu the emulator, and uh was very, very careful with my custom firmwaring of my non-bricked Switch, and extracted the game from it, and have been playing Tears of the Kingdom on my PC, and it is amazing looking at it at 60 FPS. It looks so good. And I'm very surprised by the performance of it, where um, it will stutter very briefly when it has to like compile a new shader, but it will cache it, so it loads all the shaders the next time you run the game, and it's like very smooth at this point. So uh, seeing it in that light has been really cool. But I also have been getting back to the latest Fire Emblem game and playing the DLC because I didn't realize it came out so soon. So running through all the DLC has been fun too. So yeah.
Sounds fun. Do you think we're going to get a renewed interest in emulation on Apple hardware thanks to a certain headset coming out that might have significantly more power than previous headsets and therefore might garner some attention for modding?
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I looking forward to seeing how Apple locks it down and prevents that somehow. But I don't know.
Yeah, that definitely not going to be something that most people can do.
Yeah.
But for
I mean,
developers, it might be very easy.
yeah, yeah, it might be, as easy as loading up the Xcode project and, plugging it in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm a developer because I'll try it.
Sounds good. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.